During my first year, I knew that Yale was wrong. And so I started to kind of pull back a little bit. Like I wasn't really on campus as much. The plan was still to finish Yale, and the plan was still to become a lawyer, and the plan was still to like have that life that I'd spent a lot of time and energy building for myself. But I was like, this is kind of like a free 3 years. Like I can kind of phone in the law school thing, you know, the classes, whatever. You can kind of cabin that. And then in the meantime, you'll just do all the stuff that you really want to do. And then when you graduate, you'll like die and grow up and like do the other thing. One of my best friends is a poet, and she had a whole body of work that she wanted to do something with. And so we worked together on a book where it was her poems and my drawings, not so much as an illustration project, but just kind of like exploring the same ideas into mediums. And that project was a little bit of a launching pad back into it, where I loved that so much, and I loved our conversations around that, and that felt like the most natural thing that I'd done in a long time. And I think that kind of started to open the door back into what I should probably be doing with my time. And then I really spent the next couple of years, people saw that, they kind of knew that I was like at the law school, but not really at the law school, so and people started commissioning work. Kind of like it started to kind of happen. I mean, it was always the side thing, but it was like, I'm the law student who does art for, you know, I was always in New York because I didn't want to be in New Haven, so I was kind of like living this like double life where I would like hang out with my artists here, or I would go see them. You know, it was sort of trying to like be like, yes, I do this law thing. I'm a law student, but that's not my real life. This is my real life, even though this is in fact the second life that will, I guess, end in 2 years. But that's really kind of where I started to put all my energy, because it felt so much more viable than law school. So how was kind of the end of the law school experience, and how did that translate, that moment of finishing law school at the same time that the art is kind of taking off in a way? So at the beginning of my last semester of law school, I started renting out a studio space in Brooklyn because I had a friend who needed to sublet her space, and I kind of saw it and it felt like this weird, I must take this space kind of thing. I hadn't had my own space to make work since I was 18. I had not prioritized it. I was making a lot of work in this living room. It wasn't really working. And it sort of felt like this like gift to myself that I would take in the last 6 months of law school, which kind of like the last 6 months of freedom. I would do this thing and then I would like close the chapter. But of course COVID happened. And so I never went back to Yale. Basically after March, classes went online. I barely had any because it was so chaotic. Graduation didn't really happen. And so I was just kind of here making all the work that I'd wanted to make, and I was in this isolation because I wasn't interacting with law students or law professors or lawyers or people from, I was only interacting with the people that I felt I really wanted to be in contact with, and those people happened to really feed that side of me, and it felt like I had like 1,000 ideas that were finally pouring out. And it basically, by the time graduation rolled around, which really I was like a Zoom ceremony from my bedroom, I was like a whole different person. I couldn't even like really process the fact that I had at one point gone to law school. It was just this like weird thing on the side, and I just started making work like aggressively. I just started making work like my life was about to end, and I was just in the studio all day, every day, as much as I could, all night, whatever, like making work like I'm about to die. And by the time September rolled around, and then I was sort of thinking like, I remember I was having a conversation with a friend where I was like, it's just so sad that I'm having to start my job as a lawyer when I feel like I've never been closer to saying what I want to say as an artist. And she just kind of said, well, why don't you just push it back? Like, you don't have to do this. And I was like, yeah, I guess I don't actually. I don't know why I thought it was like completely inevitable. Like I think I just lost so much agency over my own life at that point that I didn't even think that I could make that choice. So I think some part of me knew that I was never going to go back, but I needed the safety blanket of like, as I was slowly exiting my life, I just needed to kind of like have a tether. But then by the time another year had elapsed, it was like I could never go back. There was no going back. And so I just told them I The work has changed, you know, from doing that illustration work to the body of work that I'm making now. Truthfully, even though I was very unhappy as a lawyer and as a law student and whatever, I wouldn't have made this decision because I knew that the work wasn't right. Like, I knew the work wasn't ready. I didn't feel confident in the work. I didn't know what I was making. I had this skill, but I didn't know how to use it. If it had stayed there, I probably would not have made that choice. But something really did happen when I really kind of went into isolation from the law school and from all those people. There's kind of no way not to be corny about this. It's like, I went from a place of like trying to make images to a place of absolute channeling. Like, the stuff was just coming. I would just like look, my murals happened because I was sitting here, and then all of a sudden I looked at that wall and it was like covered, just like it is right now. It was just covered. And so the image had just been downloaded. So at that point I just had to go make the image. So I don't know what you call that, but it was coming from a whole different place that I had never experienced before, and it felt divine, and it felt irresistible, and it felt like I could trust it because it wasn't coming from me. The relationship making work probably shifted most when I was in that really uncomfortable period of trying to figure out what I was not. Because I think I knew that I had this skill set. I knew how to draw, I knew how to paint, and I was trying to use it, but I couldn't connect back to something that was like authentically art making. So I was just kind of doing like a lot of illustration, but it wasn't very inspired. It was more just like trying to figure out how to keep this craft that I felt really called to do, but not really knowing what to say anymore with it. I think that took a while to come back to. A friend of mine once said that it's hard to find like depth in joy, but I think that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make things that I actually want to celebrate, but without making them trite. And also, like, I think I have a sense of humor about my own work, and so there's always a sense of parody. Like, you know, things are funny. Like the girl in the bathtub. That horse is from Picasso's Parade, you know, and there's like. It's full of like mockery and parody, and I think the world that I'm trying to build is one in which like there is a sense of unconditional love and the possibility of unconditional love in this world, which is something that I'm trying to figure out how to say in a way that retains its bite and retains some power too.